It was a painful day for everyone. I think it was a painful day for our country, and it's a day that's going to change how we view ourselves and how we move forward. I think. And what we have to do now is to make sure we do something positive, that the changes we make are positive. And that's not going to be easy. It's going to take some work and it's going to take some thought. But yeah, it was a meaningful day, and I think we should kind of reflect on it and talk about it. And I'm happy to share my experiences with it. In the Canon office building where we have our offices, it was just after 12, and we were actually having lunch with our staff, and Capitol Hill Police came in and they went running door to door. I mean, we've had bomb scares before, but it's usually you get a text saying evacuate this building. And you do, but you don't go rushing out. Well, the Capitol Hill Police came banging on our doors and rushed in the office, and they said, get out, get out, get out, there's a bomb scare. And they were very urgent, and so we very quickly left. And that was before any of the protesters had showed up at the Capitol. So we left the building immediately, and most of my staff went to an evacuation area, which was actually between two office buildings on the street, or a few of them went into the other building. I went to the Capitol, to the floor, because the debate over the election integrity had started, and I wanted to be there for that. I was there for a while, I listened, and when they cleared my building, the Canon office building, which is maybe an hour or so later, I wanted to go back to my office and get a few things. So I started to go back to the office, and they wouldn't let me in. And so once again, I started to go back. This is through the underground tunnels that separate the Capitol and my office building. The tunnel goes under the roads. I thought I heard a herd of horses coming running up behind me. I mean, it was very loud, and about, I don't know, 20 or 25 Capitol Hill Police come rushing by me. And I wanted to follow them. I kind of wanted to see what was happening. They come up to a Y in the tunnel. They didn't know which way to go, and they eventually made a decision, went left. So I went, and I wasn't trying to endanger myself or be in the way. I just wanted to know what was happening. This is before we really knew. And so I was able to observe a lot of this. I went to this one entrance on the side of the Capitol facing the mall, and they were evacuating police. And I saw police come in with broken bones. I saw some of them come in with bloody faces. A couple of them had clearly been trampled. They were just covered in mud. You could see footsteps on their back, and their faces were all bruised. And that's when I realized this is now developing into a dangerous situation. This is not because the Capitol Police had clearly lost control. I started to move towards the House floor then. As I did, I went down another corridor, and I could look down at the end of the corridor on the other side of the Capitol, and I saw dozens of police that were just crushed up against the wall. And I knew it was dangerous. I thought, my heavens, those poor policemen are going to be crushed then. And I started to move towards the Capitol floor, and that's when some Capitol Police just grabbed me and another member, and they threw us into this office building that was off the floor. And they barricaded us in there. The people had broken into the Capitol. And so we ended up, because there's this flimsy kind of old door between us and the main corridor, and we ended up pushing a big conference table up against the door. Now the reason that's worth mentioning is this, because of where I was, I could actually watch the riot. I mean, I had windows. In fact, some of the rioters were right up against the window trying to break it. And it's very thick. It's bomb-proof window, so they couldn't break it, not these. But I could watch, and so I observed most of the people, the vast majority of them were standing back. Even once the barricades came down, they didn't move forward. But there were thousands of them who were there to incite violence. There were thousands of them there who were there to hurt people. And they had already rushed forward, and they were the ones who were crushing the Capitol Police up against that wall that I told you about. And so for, I don't know, more than an hour, maybe almost 2 hours, I was able to sit and watch as this all unfolded. We heard the gunshot. The poor woman who was shot was just outside the door where I was. We could hear the protesters. I could hear what they were saying and what they were chanting. These were foul, awful people. And the things they were saying were not in any way uplifting or patriotic at all. Be really clear on this. These were horrible people that were looking to harm people. And then again, the gunshot. And when we actually evacuated, I found on the doorknob or in the room we were at, some of these really thick handcuffs, as they were saying, we're going to handcuff these guys. And they were saying, we're going to find Pence and we're going to kill Pence. And, this was this is something that had to be dealt with, and we need to find the people who did this, and they absolutely have to be held accountable. I think most of these people were something else. They were, and they're not Trump supporters. Again, the normal folks who were there to support the president stood back. They didn't rush the Capitol. This was another kind of group, and they were there to, as I said, to incite violence and to hurt people. When we heard the gunshot and then the police radios light up, shots fired, shots fired. I thought, oh my gosh, this is someone's obviously been injured or hurt, and as of course it turned out she died. I don't think I got kind of a sense of how violent it was. I could hear them and they banging on the door and all that other stuff, but I thought, I never actually felt a danger. Interesting, the time I did was after they'd cleared the protesters and I was leaving, I found these handcuffs that they had hung on the door there. As I thought, man, if they got me in these handcuffs, that would have been bad. So it was actually after it is when I kind of realized, this is probably more dangerous than I thought it was. I was worried about my family. Because we have had incidences with people. I mean, at one point we had someone who threatened me, and they actually got on an airplane and flew out here. Sure. This was several years ago. And some people in my neighborhood have put up signs, shame on you, Chris, and different things like that. So I was worried about a little bit about my wife, but Governor Cox, thankfully, and others recognized that we might be worried about our families, and they took some actions to make sure that our wives and children could feel safe. Actually, on a more personal level, there was one other thing that was interesting. And it's not a big picture or a big idea, but it's probably worth mentioning. That is, as I said, I was in this office, I was watching the crowd. And I watched these two guys. They looked like two middle-aged, kind of overweight guys, not the kind of guys who were, riding around Portland on bikes, protesting every night. And they came out of the crowd and they grabbed these barricades and they were bashing on these windows. And I was, maybe 40 or 50 feet away from them and up above them, but I was close enough I could see their faces and stuff. And one of them, they put the barricade down, and one of them turned to the other one, and he said something, and you could see the look on their faces. It was like, what are we doing? And they put the barricade down, and they went back into the crowd, and I watched them, and they went back to their wives. As far as I could tell, was their wives and their family. And that was interesting to me, and that was, these guys were probably just normal folks who got caught up in the emotion, caught up in that riot mentality that sometimes happens. In fact, it happens frequently now. We saw it in Provo, as an example, and in some places here in Salt Lake City. And that was a good reminder of me about that sometimes the emotion is a bad thing. Sometimes the emotion drives people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And I think that's worth remembering, both in a real critical situation that most of us won't find ourselves in, but a demonstration that gets out of control. But I think we can apply it to other parts of our lives, and that is the emotion and the anger shouldn't control us. We shouldn't allow that anger to be a constant part of our day. We should be able to step back and in as peaceful as way as we can, evaluate these ideas and say, what can we do to help? What can I do to help? How can I assure my families and my children? And for me, it was a good reminder. Don't get caught up in the emotion. Try to stay calm and peaceful about this. Try to help. Try to be positive.